When people think about retiring in Florida, the same names come up every single time. Miami, Naples, Sarasota, the Villages, Tampa, Orlando. Those are the cities that dominate every best places to retire list, every real estate brochure, every conversation at the dinner table when someone mentions Florida. And sure, some of them have earned their reputations, but they've also earned their price tags, their traffic, their insurance premiums, and their competition for every single house in a desirable zip code. Here's what nobody talks about: Florida is a big state. It is the third most populous state in the country, covering over 65,000 square miles, with 67 counties and hundreds of distinct communities. And the overwhelming majority of those communities, the ones that don't show up in glossy magazine features, offer something the famous ones increasingly cannot: a retirement that actually fits on a fixed income. In this video, I am going to walk you through 12 Florida towns that are genuinely underrepresented in the retirement conversation. Not because they're second-rate, several of them would beat their famous counterparts on almost every metric that matters to a retiree, but because they haven't been marketed to death, because their housing prices haven't been bid up by a decade of outside speculation, because the people who live there, frankly, prefer it that way. We're going to cover each town the same way we cover everything on this channel, with actual data: median home prices, average rental costs, property tax rates, healthcare infrastructure, insurance exposure, what you get for your money and what you don't. This is not a tourism segment. This is a financial guy dressed in a sunshine jacket. Let's get into it. How we rank these towns and what we deliberately left out. Before we start the list, I want to be transparent about the criteria, because this channel's credibility depends on you understanding exactly how we built this. We were looking for towns that satisfied 5 conditions simultaneously. First, median home prices below $400,000, with meaningful inventory available in the $250,000 to $375,000 range. That puts them in reach for the majority of retirees, without requiring significant additional liquidity beyond a typical home sale. Second, cost of living at or below the Florida state average, which itself runs only about 2% above the national average. That rules out South Florida's premium markets immediately. Third, established healthcare infrastructure at minimum, a hospital within the community, or a short drive that accepts Medicare without significant access barriers. Fourth, a meaningful and established retiree population already in place. We're not recommending that you be a pioneer. We're recommending towns where the retirement infrastructure, the community organizations, the senior resources, the social fabric already exists and is functioning. Fifth, demonstrable insurance exposure that is manageable rather than catastrophic. In practical terms, that means favoring inland or northern locations over coastal ones, which dramatically reduces the insurance premium burden we covered in depth in our previous video. With that framework established, let's count them down. Inverness, the trail town nobody put on the map. Starting the list in Citrus County, roughly 70 miles north of Tampa on the Nature Coast Corridor. Inverness is not a name most retirees hear until they stumble across it by accident. That's a problem for the people who discover it too late, because by any objective measure, this town delivers an unusually strong value proposition for retirement in 2026. Let's start with a number that matters most: median home listing price in Inverness. As of March 2026, stands at approximately $271,000. That is not a typo, and it is not a distressed neighborhood. It reflects a stable, established community where the housing market has not been inflated by speculative buying or external demand surges. Inverness carries a distinction that most Florida towns don't. It is an officially designated trail town, recognized for the 47-mile width Lakuchi State Trail that runs directly through the community. For retirees, that means year-round outdoor recreation, cycling, walking, wildlife observation that costs nothing beyond the willingness to step outside. The demographics here are skewed decisively toward the retiree population, with roughly 40% of Inverness residents aged 65 or older. That concentration matters for a practical reason. It means the community services, the healthcare infrastructure, the social programming, and the local commercial landscape have all been shaped around the needs of that population. HCA Florida Citrus Hospital is located within the town itself. The Inverness Senior Games, held annually each winter, brings together hundreds of residents for competitive activities, including pickleball, shuffleboard, golf, and archery. The kind of event that reflects a community that takes its retiree population seriously, rather than treating it as a demographic afterthought. For insurance purposes, Inverness's inland, northern central position places it significantly lower on Florida's coastal exposure risk scale than communities on the Gulf or Atlantic coasts. That translates directly into lower homeowners' insurance premiums, a critical advantage in 2026's market. The honest limitation: Inverness is a genuinely small town. If you need the full spectrum of urban amenities, diverse dining, cultural institutions, major airport proximity, this is not your town. But if what you want is a manageable, walkable, affordably priced community with strong outdoor access and a genuine senior social infrastructure, Inverness belongs in your research stack. 11. Sebring, America's value golf capital on a lake. Southeast of Inverness in Highlands County, Sebring is one of the most aggressively affordable retirement towns in the state of Florida, and one of the least discussed. The headline number median home values in Sebring are approximately $235,000 as of 2026. Average monthly rent runs around $1,200. If you are a retiree coming from a high-cost state carrying significant equity from a home sale, Sebring will feel like a different financial universe. The town is built around a circular downtown, one of the most distinctive layouts of any Florida community centered on Lake Jackson. That physical organization means Sebring has genuine walkability in its core, something that's surprisingly rare in Florida's car-dependent suburban landscape. Lake Jackson anchors the recreational life of the town: fishing, boating, lakefront dining, sunset watching from Hidden Beach Park. Here's the data point that has earned Sebring its unofficial nickname, America's Value Golf Capital. The town has 10 golf courses, with green fees starting at $25 per round. For retirees who move to Florida specifically for year-round golf, that is a number worth sitting with for a moment. The Villages charges hundreds of dollars in monthly amenity fees. Sebring's courses are accessible for the price of a casual lunch. Property tax rates in Highlands County are among the lower ranges within Florida, and the inland location reduces insurance exposure meaningfully compared to coastal highlands. Healthcare infrastructure includes hospitals, specialist facilities, and senior-specific programming through New Hope Senior Dining and Activity Centers, which provides meals, exercise classes, and social programming specifically designed for older adults. The realistic considerations: Sebring's small size and rural character mean you are trading urban access for affordability. The nearest major metropolitan healthcare center for complex procedures or specialist care beyond what's locally available requires a drive. That is a non-trivial consideration for retirees managing significant ongoing medical needs. But for healthy, active retirees who prioritize financial sustainability and outdoor lifestyle over urban proximity, Sebring is one of the strongest pure value propositions in the state. 10. Palm Coast, the northeast coast town that built itself right. Moving to northeast Florida, about midway between Daytona Beach and St. Augustine on the Atlantic coast, Palm Coast. Palm Coast was built as a master plan community in the 1970s. That origin story is actually significant, and not just for historical reasons. Because the infrastructure was designed intentionally rather than evolving organically, Palm Coast has something genuinely rare in Florida: an organized, rational physical layout, wide bike paths, well-maintained parks, a network of canals winding through residential neighborhoods, streets that connect logically, the kind of bones that make daily life genuinely manageable, rather than a constant negotiation with traffic and sprawl. As of 2026, Palm Coast is ranked among the top 39 safest cities in the United States. That statistic is verified. Palm Coast has maintained consistently strong safety rankings from multiple independent rating organizations. For retirees, safety is not a secondary consideration, it is foundational. Housing in Palm Coast runs below both the Florida state average and the national coastal premium. Median home prices in 2026 sit in the upper $200,000 through low $300,000 for standard residential properties. That puts substantial inventory well within reach of typical retirement budgets. Average monthly rent runs approximately $1,500 to $1,700 for a comfortable single-family home in one of Palm Coast's residential sections. The geographic position on Florida's northeast coast north of Daytona, south of St. Augustine, is relevant to insurance. This stretch of the Atlantic coast faces lower hurricane frequency and intensity exposure than either South Florida or the Gulf Coast's vulnerable southwestern shoreline. That doesn't make insurance cheap. Nothing in Florida makes insurance cheap in 2026, but it keeps it in a category that doesn't threaten a fixed-income retirement budget the way Miami or Fort Myers area premiums can. Healthcare access is served by both Advent Health and Halifax Health systems within reasonable driving distances, and the proximity to St. Augustine, genuinely one of the great small cities in the American Southeast, means cultural and dining access is a short trip away rather than a full-day commitment. If the Villages represents Florida retirement at maximum amenity and maximum cost, Palm Coast represents something more like a calm, well-organized version of retirement infrastructure built for longevity rather than spectacle. 9 Lakeland. 38 lakes and 0 pretension. Exactly halfway between Tampa and Orlando on Interstate 4 sits Lakeland, and it has been winning over retirees quietly for years, without ever needing to advertise. The city's name is literal and understated. There are more than 38 lakes within Lakeland city limits. Many of them are surrounded by parks, walking trails, and the kind of quiet waterfront scenery that turns an afternoon walk into genuine restoration. Lake Mirror, in particular, anchors the downtown area in a way that most Florida cities can't replicate: a genuine civic centerpiece that functions as public space rather than private development. Housing costs in Lakeland sit meaningfully below the Florida average. Median home prices in 2026 run in the $280,000 to $320,000 range for quality residential inventory, though the range varies depending on neighborhood and proximity to the lake corridors. For retirees, comparing Lakeland to nearby Tampa or the Orlando metro, where median home prices are routinely above $380,000, and climbing the gap is substantial and translates directly into lower monthly carrying costs. Healthcare infrastructure in Lakeland is not a compromise. Lakeland Regional Health is one of the busiest hospital systems in the state of Florida, with capacity and specialist depth that exceeds what many coastal retirement towns can offer. For retirees prioritizing healthcare proximity and quality, particularly those managing ongoing conditions, Lakeland's medical infrastructure is a genuine competitive advantage over smaller towns on this list. The location on I-4 is a double-edged data point. The highway connection means easy access to both Tampa International Airport and Orlando's airport system, meaningful for retirees who who maintain connections with family across the country. On the other hand, the corridor's growth means Lakeland is experiencing development pressure and population increase that is gradually pushing costs upward. It is not yet an expensive market, but it is a market that has been discovered and is pricing accordingly. One more thing worth noting. Lakeland has a strong, established arts and culture scene that punches above its population weight, anchored by Florida Southern College, which is one of the largest collections of Frank Lloyd Wright architecture in the world. That is not a retirement amenity you'll find advertised on the usual lists, but for retirees who care about living somewhere with genuine cultural texture, it matters. Gainesville, the college town that secretly loves retirees. At first mention, Gainesville sounds like an unusual retirement recommendation. It's primarily known as a college town, home to the University of Florida with its 50,000-plus students. But follow the data, and the logic becomes clear quickly. Median rent in Gainesville runs approximately $1,523 per month, well below the Florida average, and significantly below any coastal retirement market. Housing costs follow a similar pattern, with median home prices that make Gainesville one of the more affordable cities of its size in the state. But here's the specific advantage that makes Gainesville genuinely special for retirees of health. The University of Florida's Academic Medical Center is one of the top-ranked hospitals in the Southeast. With specialist depth and research capacity that most Florida cities, including several that are marketed aggressively as retirement destinations, simply cannot match. For retirees managing complex health conditions, living within reasonable proximity of an academic medical center is not a luxury. It is a hedge against the most catastrophic financial risk in retirement: catastrophic healthcare costs, driven by inadequate local access. The practical side of a college town economy: restaurant prices, entertainment costs, and daily service expenses are calibrated partly around a student budget. That means affordable dining options, accessible fitness facilities, cultural events at university rates, and a commercial environment that's been optimized for spending within constraints. For a retiree on a fixed income, that market dynamic is favorable. Gainesville's inland position in north-central Florida provides meaningful hurricane risk reduction. The freshwater springs in the surrounding area, including Equitucknee Springs State Park, offer a recreational resource that is both spectacular and largely free. The honest caveat: Gainesville is an active, busy city. The college population creates energy and noise that is absolutely not for everyone. If your retirement vision involves a quiet, slow-paced community with a median age of 65, Gainesville will likely feel wrong. But if you are a retiree who wants intellectual engagement, healthcare security, affordability, and outdoor access with the option to get away from all of it within a 30-minute drive in any direction, Gainesville makes a case that very few Florida cities can match. 7 Fort Pierce, the Treasure Coast town still flying under the radar. Situated on Florida's Treasure Coast, approximately halfway between Miami and St. Augustine, Fort Pierce has consistently avoided the pricing premium that has overtaken its more famous neighbors to the south. The median home price in Fort Pierce as of August 2025 was $265,000, with more than 80% of homes selling under their listing price. That seller's market dynamic, in the context of 2026's Florida housing landscape, where coastal markets are either overpriced or in condo-specific decline, represents a genuine opportunity for a retiree buyer who does the homework. Fort Pierce's identity is built on water. Jetty Park, Fort Pierce Inlet State Park, the half-mile beachfront that remains uncrowded for 11 months of the year. This is coastal Florida living without the coastal Florida price tag. The Sunrise City moniker is not just tourism marketing. The watercolor skies over the inlet genuinely earned the name. Healthcare access in Fort Pierce runs through the HCA Florida Lawnwood Hospital System and a network of specialist facilities that have grown alongside a steadily increasing retiree population. The Senior Resource Network in Indian River and St. Lucie counties provides coordination of social services, transportation assistance, and aging-in-place support infrastructure that goes meaningfully beyond what smaller communities can offer. The Treasure Coast's position between Miami and Jacksonville places it in a hurricane exposure zone that requires careful insurance review. It is coastal, and coastal means elevated premiums compared to inland alternatives. But the corridor's exposure history is less severe than Southwest Florida's Gulf-facing shoreline, and insurance remains meaningfully more affordable here than in South Florida's metro markets. If Vero Beach, our number 5 entry, is the Treasure Coast's most well-known underrated town, Fort Pierce is the one that's still in the early innings of being discovered. The window at these prices may not stay open indefinitely. 6. Ocala, the horse capital with a cost of living surprise. Ocala is what happens when a Florida city builds a genuine identity around something that has nothing to do with beaches or tourism. The horse capital of the world is not marketing language. Ocala and Marion County host over 1,200 horse farms, multiple world-class equestrian facilities, and a kind of rural pastoral landscape that is genuinely unlike anything else in Florida. You don't need to own a horse to appreciate what that environment produces: open land, green corridors, a pace of life that feels fundamentally different from the resort corridor Florida most people imagine. On-cost median home values in Ocala as of 2026 are approximately $267,000. Average monthly rent runs around $1,523 below the Florida average and significantly below the major metros. Ocala's cost of living consistently runs below the national average on most tracking measures, driven primarily by housing, which is priced well beneath the Florida state mean. On top of the world, and Del Webb Stone Creek, two of the most recognized names in active adult community development, both have major established presences in Ocala. On Top of the World specifically offers 54 holes of golf across 3 courses, indoor and outdoor swimming pools, a 14-acre radio-controlled flying field, fitness centers, health clubs, restaurants, and over 175 organized clubs and leagues. Home prices start in the $200,000 range. That combination of amenity depth and entry-level pricing is genuinely rare in the 55-plus community landscape. Healthcare in Ocala is served by a growing infrastructure, including Advent Health Ocala, and a specialist network that has expanded to serve the community's large and growing retirement population. Proximity to Gainesville and UF Health, about 40 miles, provides a secondary option for complex care. The Ocala National Forest to the east and Rainbow Springs State Park to the southwest provide freshwater spring access and outdoor recreation that requires no travel budget whatsoever. Glass-bottom boat tours on Silver Springs, manatee observation, miles of hiking trails. These are Ocala's natural endowments, and they cost almost nothing to use. Ocala is one of the most complete value packages in Florida retirement. The data is consistent and clear across multiple measurement frameworks. The communities are established and functional. The healthcare is adequate with strong nearby backup, and the prices have not yet caught up to what the market arguably should charge for what it delivers. 5. Vero Beach, the understated Treasure Coast town that earns every comparison to the Hamptons and still costs half as much. Vero Beach carries a reputation as the Hamptons of Florida. That comparison is accurate in some ways and wildly misleading in others. It is accurate in the sense that Vero Beach has genuine cultural polish. The Vero Beach Museum of Art is a legitimately excellent institution. Riverside Theater stages professional quality productions. The architecture along Ocean Drive has restraint and elegance that feels nothing like what Florida usually produces. The community has maintained a conscious resistance to overdevelopment, low-rise building standards, limited franchise saturation, preservation of the coastal barrier island character. It is wildly misleading in the sense that the price tag is not remotely Hamptons level. Median monthly rent in Vero Beach runs approximately $1,509 per month. Median home values, depending on the specific data source and segment, land in a range from the upper Mayuan 200,000 Aus to mid Mayuan 300,000 for quality residential inventory, well below what comparably positioned coastal towns in Palm Beach County or the Broward market would demand for equivalent quality. The 26 miles of Atlantic coastline, largely uncrowded, carefully managed, genuinely beautiful, belong to residents 11 months of the year. The 12th month, during peak spring break traffic, is the town's one concession to Florida's seasonal chaos. Everything else about Vero Beach operates at a pace and scale that is the deliberate opposite of the resort corridor experience. Healthcare is anchored by Cleveland Clinic Indian River Hospital, one of the top-rated facilities on the Treasure Coast, providing a level of institutional credibility that retirees managing complex health situations should weight heavily. The Cleveland Clinic brand carries specific expectations about care quality and coordination that matter when you are making a 20-year location decision. The Senior Resource Association in Vero Beach provides meal delivery, transportation coordination, and aging-in-place support infrastructure. Public transportation, rare in this part of Florida, is functional enough to reduce car dependency in certain situations, a meaningful consideration for retirees planning for reduced driving capability in later years. The one honest cost consideration for Vero Beach, it is a coastal town on the Atlantic Barrier Island, and insurance reflects that. Premiums are elevated compared to inland alternatives. The calculation is whether the lifestyle and the Cleveland Clinic access justifies the premium. For many retirees it does. Or Punta Gorda. Southwest Florida's most coherent value proposition. Punta Gorda is the town that locals and long-term Southwest Florida residents consistently point to when asked where they'd actually choose to retire. It is not overrun by the tourism infrastructure that defines its neighbors to the south. It is not competing on the luxury positioning that makes Naples inaccessible to most fixed-income retirees. It is, in the truest sense of the phrase, a real town, one built around residential life rather than around a tourist experience. The cost of living in Punta Gorda runs approximately 6% below the national average and 7% below the Florida state average. Housing expenses specifically are 19% below the national average. For a retiree coming from a high-cost state with equity from a home sale, Punta Gorda's purchasing power differential is substantial. As of early 2026, typical home prices in Punta Gorda's Charlotte County range from the mid-$300,000s to low $400,000. We are 000s for quality single-family homes, with meaningful inventory available below $350,000 in well-maintained communities outside the premium canal front segment. Compare that to Naples, where median prices routinely top $600,000, or to Sarasota, where comparable quality homes command $450,000 to $550,000. Punta Gorda delivers a similar waterfront adjacent Southwest Florida lifestyle at a significant discount. The canal system in Punta Gorda Isles is one of the most extensive in Charlotte County. Boating and water access that in other Southwest Florida markets would command a 30% to 50% price premium is available here at rational prices. Charlotte Harbor access, excellent fishing, waterfront dining, a small but functional historic downtown. Punta Gorda has genuine character that doesn't require the suspension of financial discipline to access. Kings Gate, the established 55-plus gated community in adjacent Port Charlotte, provides a microcosm of what makes the area work. Resort-style amenities, organized programming, strong community culture, and home prices that start well below what comparable communities in the Sarasota or Naples corridor would charge. One data point worth noting in Punta Gorda's favor for 2026, specifically, the housing market is a genuine buyer's market. Charlotte County recorded one of the largest inventory spikes in the country in 2025 active listings, roughly double the long-term average. Homes are sitting for 90 to 120 days on average and selling at meaningful discounts to list price. For a cash buyer or a buyer who isn't racing against competing offers, the negotiating leverage is real and significant right now. 3. Dunedin. The Gulf Coast town that got everything right at a scale that still works. Dunedin occupies a specific and unusual position in Florida's retirement landscape. It is a Gulf Coast town with genuine character, genuine walkability, a thriving arts and brewery scene, and a cost of living that runs approximately 3% below the national average, while being located a short drive from the Clearwater metro area's full healthcare infrastructure. The cost of living differential is meaningful but not dramatic. Dunedin's housing runs about 16% below the national average, not far below, but enough to matter at the margins of a retirement budget. Median home prices sit in a range that, while not as aggressively low as inland alternatives on this list, remains accessible compared to what comparable Gulf Coast character towns further south would charge. What Dunedin does that other towns on this list don't do is deliver urban walkability in a genuinely small-town context. The downtown is real locally owned shops, restaurants calibrated for residents rather than tourists, breweries that have developed genuine reputations beyond the local market, an art scene anchored by the Dunedin Fine Arts Center and the Dunedin History Museum. The Pinellas Trail connects Dunedin to the broader regional trail network, providing non-car recreation access that is functionally superior to most of Florida's suburban retirement corridor offerings. Honeymoon Island State Park is literally at the end of the causeway. One of Florida's best-preserved barrier islands is accessible by a short drive and an affordable state park entry fee. For retirees who want the Gulf experience without the Gulf premium, Dunedin's proximity to both Honeymoon Island and Caladesi Island, consistently ranked among the country's best beaches, is a specific and meaningful differentiator. Healthcare access in Dunedin runs through the Clearwater-St. Petersburg Metropolitan Health System, which includes Morton Plant Hospital and a full network of specialist facilities. Distance to major medical infrastructure in Tampa is manageable for most situations. Crime rates in Dunedin run approximately 18% below the national average, a statistic that in practice translates to the kind of quality of life security that retirees frequently cite as a primary relocation driver. The one real constraint Dunedin's appeal is not a secret, and housing inventory in the most desirable sections of the downtown corridor is limited. The market is more competitive here than in inland alternatives. You need to move with knowledge and some urgency to capture Dunedin at the value it still represents in 2026. 2. Mount Dora. The one that looks like it belongs in New England and costs like it's still 2018. Mount Dora is the Florida town that surprises people who expect Florida to look like Florida. Situated on the shores of Lake Dora in Lake County, roughly 30 miles northwest of Orlando, Mount Dora has an architectural character, a topographic distinctiveness. It sits on a hill, genuinely unusual for Florida, and a downtown identity that reads more like a well-preserved New England village than anything you'd expect from a Sunshine State retirement destination. Antique shops, art galleries, independent restaurants, lakefront parks, a sense of permanence and investment in the public realm that distinguishes it immediately from Florida's sprawl-built suburban alternatives. The festival calendar in Mount Dora is one of the most active of any small town in Florida. The annual antique fair regularly attracts tens of thousands of visitors. The craft fair, the music festival, the blueberry festival. The events are numerous, and well organized enough to function as a genuine community gathering infrastructure, not just a tourism exercise. Housing in Mount Dora, and this is where the data gets interesting, is priced meaningfully below what its quality and character would suggest. Median home values in the broader Lake County area run well below the state average, and while Mount Dora's lakefront and historic district sections command a premium within that local market, a retiree with a $350,000 to $400,000 budget has genuine access to quality inventory in and around the town. The proximity to Orlando, about 35 to 40 minutes, means Advent Health and Orlando Health, two of the most comprehensive healthcare systems in the state, are within reach without requiring daily commute-level travel. That combination of small-town living with major city healthcare proximity is difficult to find and genuinely valuable for retirement planning. Safety Harbor draws comparisons to Mount Dora among Florida retirees who prioritize community character over coastal access. But Mount Dora's specific lake setting, its New England aesthetic, its established festival culture, and its pricing relative to comparable character towns make it the stronger recommendation for our criteria. If you walked through Mount Dora and didn't know where you were, you might guess Vermont or Connecticut. When you check the January temperature forecast and realize it's 68 degrees, you understand why people who find this town tend to stop looking. 1. Safety Harbor. The best retirement town in Florida that almost nobody outside of Tampa Bay has heard of. Safety Harbor is the #1 entry on this list because it satisfies every criterion we established at the beginning: affordability, healthcare access, established retiree community, manageable insurance exposure, genuine character, and it does so while also being, by most objective measures, one of the most livable small cities in the state of Florida. Safety Harbor sits on the western shore of Tampa Bay, in Pinellas County, directly between Clearwater and Tampa. Its population is modest, approximately 17,000 to 19,000 permanent residents, but its density of amenities and quality of civic life is entirely out of proportion with that size. The town takes its name literally. Safety Harbor's identity is built around 5 natural springs that flow from the Espiritu Santo Springs and a resort and spa complex that has served the area since the 1920s. The spa culture is not a marketing invention. It reflects a genuine historical and civic identity around wellness that permeates the community's character. Safety Harbor Resort and Spa remains an operational anchor of the downtown, drawing both visitors and supporting a local economy calibrated around health, leisure, and quality of life rather than throughput tourism. The Safety Harbor waterfront park system is extraordinary for a city of this size. The Philippe Park, a 122-acre county park on Old Tampa Bay, provides kayaking, fishing, hiking, and picnic infrastructure at no cost. The downtown walkability is genuine independent restaurants, coffee shops, boutiques, and a weekly farmers market, all within a comfortable walking radius. Housing in Safety Harbor sits at the intersection of being genuinely attainable and genuinely valuable. Median home prices in 2026 run in the $380,000 to $430,000 range, toward the upper end of our target threshold. But for a waterfront-adjacent Tampa Bay community with Safety Harbor's specific character and infrastructure, this represents exceptional value compared to what Clearwater Beach, Dunedin's most desirable sections, or any comparable Tampa Bay community would charge for equivalent quality. Healthcare access is the strongest single entry on Safety Harbor's resume. The community sits at the geographic center of the Tampa Bay Metropolitan Healthcare Ecosystem, Meese Dunedin Hospital, Bayfront Health Safety Harbor, and the full network of Baycare Health System facilities are within minutes. Tampa General Hospital, routinely ranked among the nation's best hospitals, is accessible across the Howard Franklin Bridge. For retirees who prioritize healthcare above all other considerations, Safety Harbor's geographic position within the Tampa Bay system is unsurpassed among small-town alternatives. Crime rates in Safety Harbor are low. The school system relevant for retirees who have grandchildren visiting regularly is rated above the county average. The social infrastructure includes a dedicated senior center, active community organizations, and the kind of social fabric that comes from a stable, long-tenured residential population rather than a transient seasonal one. On insurance, Safety Harbor's position on Tampa Bay, while technically coastal, is sheltered in a way that reduces direct hurricane exposure compared to Gulf-facing communities. That relative sheltering does not eliminate insurance costs. Nothing in Florida eliminates insurance costs in 2026, but it keeps them meaningfully below what Gulf-facing Pinellas County communities command. Safety Harbor is the answer to the question, where in Florida can I retire, live within my budget, access world-class health care?